Hello and welcome to the MovieKing Podcast. My name is David Jurmann and I'll be your host. On today's episode, I'm going to review the film Him, and in the second half, I'm going to review the movie A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. So starting off with Him, I was really looking forward to this movie. It's a new horror movie produced by Jordan Peele that seemed to be bringing something new to the genre. It's about a football player who wants to be the next GOAT, greatest of all time, and trains with a famous quarterback who might be retiring. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of horror movies, I don't really think of football. I don't really think of sports in general. So, to find a way to combine those two very different things is unique and intriguing in my opinion. I think that's a very cool idea. I just really think like football movies get kind of repetitive. They're all the same usually. And to kind of inject some horror in there and inject some like violence and scares in a sport that is kind of inherently, a bit violent and brutal at times could be a very fascinating idea. And Jordan Peele is kind of an expert with horror. He's made some really great movies over the years, produced some great movies, and he makes a lot of thematically rich films. They have a lot of things in them that like make them a little more thoughtful. Like there's a bit more to analyze in them. So I had faith this movie would be something more than just your run-of-the-mill horror movie or even just a run-of-the-mill football movie. A lot of people think that Jordan Peele is actually writing and directing the film, which isn't true. He is only producing. So just know that going into the film, like it's not by the same guy who directed and wrote Get Out, Us, and Nope. It's produced by the guy who made those movies. So he's not really creatively involved that much. He's just kind of overseeing the project and giving some advice and all that stuff. But he's not like the big creative voice behind it. Instead, Justin Tipping directs the film, and he co-wrote it as well. Now, I'm not familiar with Tipping as a filmmaker, but all I can say is after seeing the movie, I unfortunately don't know how much I want to see of his other work. Almost every filmmaker has a bad day at the office every once in a while, and maybe this is just one of those bad days, but honestly, I thought Him was a terrible movie. And that's not to say anything bad against Tipping as a person or a filmmaker, really. I just don't think this was a good movie, and it was very discouraging to me for being intrigued in what his next thing might be. And I don't know, I really hope, he comes back after this. I hope, his next film, should he get one, is much better. I just felt like this film is just like a very incoherent vision. I had heard not great things before going into it from reviews, and I still tried to keep an open mind. I tried not to let that get in the way of my thoughts on the film, especially because this type of movie is a bit more abstract and metaphorical. It can sometimes go over people's heads and be interpreted differently. So, in that kind of movie, you want to try to see maybe this will work for me, or maybe it didn't work for everyone else. Maybe I'll see the vision that no one else did. Unfortunately, I didn't really see the vision here. I just felt like it wasn't saying anything. I'll get more into that later, but I have to say that the movie is honestly even worse than I expected, even after lowering my expectations. Just to get the positives out of the way, I think Marlon Wayans is the easy highlight of the whole movie. He gives an excellent performance that has nuance, is at times funny, and at times very uncomfortable. And his performance is so much better than anything you would take away from the character, like just as far as he's written. And every time he was on screen, the movie was at least a little more interesting than it was before. I was at least a little bit more engaged just every time I saw his character and his performance, because he just keeps the film alive a little bit. Like, he is one of those things where, like sometimes you watch a movie and it's a really bad movie, but there's like one performance just kind of like, how did they get this guy? Like, that's what this movie is. Like, I don't know how they got Marlon Wayans for this film, but he just did an excellent job. And I want to see more of him, doing these more dramatic roles. He's normally very comedic, and he does a lot of like silly spoof kind of comedy. This was really good, though. And I'd also say that the movie at least feels visually interesting. There's a lot of cutting in the edit. There's a few unique visual elements sprinkled throughout the movie, one being the sort of x-ray vision you see when characters like kind of butt heads and stuff. That was interesting, and a whole lot of it just doesn't look like your typical horror movie. It feels like it does have a different look to it, and maybe that is Justin Tipping's style coming out. I did like that it feels a little different. I mean, I will say the editing kind of gave me some like Suicide Squad 2016 flashbacks where it just felt like it was kind of edited by, like a music video kind of guy, or like a trailer company where they're just really going for like kind of quick cuts and just kind of the most, obscure editing, I guess. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. I don't know, I'm a little mixed on the editing. But really, that's about where my positives end with the film. The story here is practically non-existent. It also never revs up. Like, usually in a horror movie, it'll slowly build suspense and tension and kind of ease into things. That doesn't happen here. The movie has a few scenes where things get a little uncomfortable, maybe a little on edge, a little violent, and some things happen that are scary for the characters, but they're rarely addressed, they don't leave a lasting impact, and it takes a while for anything like that to happen again, Like, and even just like most horror movies, like any good horror movie, like even The Conjuring Last Rites, which I didn't think was a very good movie, that's a film that has a very, calm first act. You're kind of getting adjusted to the characters, you're getting into everything going on, and then as the movie progresses, things get gradually more intense. That does not happen in Him. The movie just never gets going. Like, it never really, like, the movie's paced kind of over the course of several days, and I can't really say that the later days felt more intense or more scary than the last ones. They're all just kind of at a single, like, one level, and that was very disappointing to me. It really doesn't feel like the story has any major events until you reach the final 20 minutes or so. Like, you could fall asleep during the entire middle section of the movie, and you wouldn't have missed anything, really. You maybe, you might question a couple things, like, oh, how'd that guy get there? Or why is that guy, like, bleeding or something? But, besides that, you really don't miss anything. Like, nothing happens in the movie. That's what's really frustrating. Like, nothing happens. The whole movie, you're just kind of like, all right, where's this going? What are we getting at here? And it just kind of keeps repeating the same thing over and over and over again, that by the time you're on, like, the fourth or fifth day, you're just kind of like, are we done here? Like, can we wrap it up? It was very, very frustrating. There is one standout scene in the movie, to me, that's about throwing a football quickly and some consequences for taking too long at doing that. And that was by far the best scene in the movie to me. It made me think the film would go further into that territory, but it doesn't. And even that scene could have been done a little better, but I thought it at least was a little intense. It kind of gave me a feeling of like, ooh, that's kind of like messed up here. Like, what are we doing? And that was a good scene. That made me feel a little uncomfortable, and that was the good horror in it. Can't really say that happened the rest of the movie. You get a lot of jump scares, some really, just kind of like crazy sudden ones, and they're not scary, but they are startling. But I think another major issue with this film is that we never really see the characters change. The lead, played by Tyreek Withers, is the same for the entire movie. He doesn't show much emotion, he looks robotic for most of the runtime, and I'm assuming it was an intentional choice and not the actor's fault. But his character doesn't get any development either. He always acts the same regardless of what's happening. He barely has any reactions to anything going on. It just feels like a character that's just there and doesn't really evolve. And like, I think for the point this movie is trying to make, at least what I took from it, he needed to change throughout the movie. He needed to have a performance that evolved. And I thought the film might attempt to dive into how sports players kind of lose their humanity as they make sacrifices to be great. But I wouldn't know that because the performances and writing don't reflect that. It's very, like, hard to decipher what this movie's really going for because it doesn't say much of anything. And what it does say, it just says so on the nose and isn't very, like, subtle about it. So you're just kind of like, where's the nuance in here? Where's the part where you really kind of, like, say more than that? It gives you, like, a basic, like, statement. Like, it gives you, like, the basic thesis statement, but it doesn't actually, like, go into detail about why we're saying this. Just very frustrating. I know it's a little bit of a rant, but that's kind of where my problems with this movie come in very hard, because I don't really know what this movie's trying to get at. It's saying something very basic. It doesn't go deeper than that. It doesn't have anything that would make me think more. It's not a movie that makes me want to think more about it. It's very frustrating. And yeah, just the themes are just so surface level and shallow, and they hit you over the head many times, but it's not saying anything more than what you see right in front of you. Maybe others will feel differently, and I think I have seen a few others that really seem to kind of take away a little more from it, and that's great. I applaud those people. But I specifically looked at this movie for things under the surface. I knew that it was going to be a little more metaphorical than your average movie, and I looked for it, but I didn't find anything. Not during the movie, and not even after discussing it with a friend. I didn't find anything further to analyze. A movie like Nope has a story you can enjoy on the surface, but also has all this extra commentary you can analyze after the fact. Him doesn't have anything like that. It doesn't have the story to enjoy on the surface, and it doesn't have any commentary underneath. I also hate the way Him uses its horror. So much of the movie relies on hallucinations and visions. I think that's one of the worst tropes in horror because I never know what's real and what's not. And because of that, I'm never on the edge of my seat or in fear for the characters because I'm like, if this isn't real, then they're not really in danger and I don't have to worry about them. But then it might, fool you because they actually are in danger and you didn't know that. And you're like, oh, I guess that's real. Okay. So I hate those kind of tropes. I think they're very cheap and they're very frustrating. The movie does that a lot. So that was another thing I really didn't like. And not to mention that a lot of this movie is so unclear and makes little sense. The way the lead character gets an injury early on is so out of left field and bizarre. It's never addressed, though, directly. So I literally sat there for 20 minutes questioning if what happened was real or in the character's head. And that kind of just goes back to what I was saying about the hallucinations and visions kind of thing. That really messes you up as an audience member because you don't know how to react to what's happening. And it just takes you out of the movie. It doesn't make anything more clear or more intense. It just kind of makes everything more confusing. And the last few minutes of this movie are also incredibly stupid and make no sense. Things are very quickly revealed, and it's both underwhelming and nonsensical at the same time. Why the movie never established any of this earlier is beyond me. And then the final moments are so dumb. I was laughing at the movie. I was literally just laughing at the movie like it was a comedy. It was ridiculous and so different tonally from everything else that was happening. The dialogue sucked. And when the whole thing ended, I just shook my head and rolled my eyes. What did I just watch? What was that? Look, Him is a movie that I literally didn't think about for more than an hour after watching it. I was talking about it with my friend, and after about an hour, we just watched another movie and talked about that one for the rest of the night because I didn't want to think about Him anymore. It's not a movie that I really want to give more time to, and I just can't recommend it, even to horror fans. I can't say that this movie's worth watching. Maybe you'll enjoy it if you because it's a little more artsy and a little more abstract. Maybe you'll find something in it that I didn't. But it's a frustrating film that kind of wasted my time and made me feel like I had to make more sacrifices watching it than the characters did in the film. Look, I mean, I don't think it's the worst movie of the year. I know I'm roasting this movie very hard right now. I don't think it's the worst movie I've seen this year. I have seen a few that I would put lower on my list, but it's really darn bad. I kind of hated it, and I really feel bad for Jordan Peele, who has his name plastered all over the marketing. People think he made this movie, and he is a great filmmaker. So whatever he does next, I will absolutely be there for Jordan Peele. Justin Tipping, I mean, look, if I hear his next movie's good, I'll be supportive of it. I'll watch it, absolutely. I just really didn't like this movie, and I feel bad because I think they did try. I don't think this is a movie that was bad because no one tried. I think it's a bad movie because there just wasn't a very clear vision behind it. And as a result, I was just kind of left very confused. So I'm going to rate this movie a D+. Alright, and next up is A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. So here is yet another movie I was very excited for based on the promise of the trailers. I love the trailers for this film. It looked heartwarming, endearingly weird, and wonderful. It also had this great song by Gracie Abrams in the trailer, which I really thought kind of made me want to see it more. And I love Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell. They're both seriously talented actors, some of the best working today. Margot Robbie just was excellent in Barbie recently. Colin Farrell killed it as the Penguin in the TV show, and also like Banshees of Inisherin. He's amazing in that too. And this kind of movie is just very up my alley. It's about two strangers that go on this bizarre journey together as they open doors all over the country that take them back to personal memories from their pasts. These types of intimate, spiritual, emotionally driven journeys are really some of my favorite kinds of stories. I think they're very well done usually. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is a great example of that, and it's kind of what I expected this movie would be like. That film is just a really great like analysis of people's mental states and kind of just the ways people interact in the memories, the way memories kind of have an impact on us. And I thought this movie would be a lot like that. And look, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that at times, A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey is exactly what I wanted, and it gave me the exact feelings I was hoping to get out of it. The bad news is that there are only a few scenes that really made me feel that way. So, the film is at its strongest when it's exploring the characters and their most personal memories, specifically with their parents. These are the very tender and well-acted scenes that warmed my heart. I thought they were very good, and they got a nice emotional reaction out of me, and I was just sitting there kind of watching it like, yeah, I like this a lot, like, I'm feeling something. And a few scenes in the second half especially were effective, and I really wish the whole movie was like that, because those feelings, if they lasted the entire movie, I think this would have been a great film. There's also one very charming musical sequence in the first half that I really loved. It's a lot of fun, it's charming, it's cute. And also Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell do a good job in the film as you would expect. They give good performances. I'm really not even sure that their chemistry together was all that great, to be honest. Like, I don't really think I felt much for them as a couple in the movie. Part of that may be due to the writing, but they themselves were enjoyable to watch and give good performances. I would also say the cinematography is gorgeous. There's a lot of color and breathtaking shots. I really like how the movie looks. There's a really nice, like, just kind of use of landscapes and just sort of the places people are. Like, you get a lot of beautiful imagery of that. There's this one shot where two people are just kind of, they're kind of sitting and looking down, and you see, like, Earth, and it's a great shot. I love that shot. And there's another one where they're just kind of facing, like, outside on, like, a boat or something. That's another really good shot. And, I think the movie just looks great. And in that sense, this is a beautiful journey. It's just not a very big or bold one. And what I mean by that is that the characters keep going on this weird and unexpected journey, but it doesn't feel all that grand or special. It doesn't feel like a journey that's really meaningful in the ways that it needs to be. And I blame a lot of the writing for this. But one major issue I have with the movie is that it's nowhere near self-aware enough. The characters almost never question anything that's happening to them, and they never go like, oh gee, why is my GPS in my car talking to me? Or, how are we in space right now? Or, why is nobody questioning this random 40-year-old with a kid in high school? I think the movie had some major missed opportunities for comedy and chemistry if the characters simply embraced the weirdness of what was going on. If they took a moment and just kind of acknowledged that what was happening to them isn't normal, I think that's a great opportunity for some laughs, and also just to have the characters kind of bond over something. But the movie doesn't do that, and I think as a result, a lot of it comes across as oddly robotic, and therefore kind of monotone, because it just kind of has the same beat for the entire movie, similar to Him. A lot better than Him, but it's similar to that in that the whole movie just kind of has this one note that it's doing. It's not really adapting to different things. You do get a few different types of sequences tonally in the movie, which I think were nice, but it doesn't really have, like, an evolution within the journey. Like, the beginning of the journey doesn't feel that different from the end of it, beyond the character arcs that we're getting. And when these great scenes do come along, I was really enjoying myself. But a lot of the time, the movie just fell kind of flat for me. And another complaint I have, and this may sound strange, is the swearing. Normally, this doesn't bother me at all in a movie. I couldn't care less if a character swears like 10 times or 100 times, but I couldn't help but notice it here. Like, the movie is just so tame, the whole thing. Like, it doesn't have much that would be inappropriate for kids. And frankly, it should have been PG-13. Like, this movie is rated R, and I don't know why. Like, there is no reason for it to be rated R. Characters would swear all the time out of nowhere, and it was never warranted or made a scene better. Like, it wasn't like they were swearing and I was like, oh, that feels like a good use of saying that word. Like, it doesn't feel like it's part of the characters. It just feels like they're using it to try to make it funny. But I'm literally like, I was thinking watching the movie, if you just took these words out and just replaced them with something else, nothing would have changed. So I don't know. It's a weird thing to complain about, I know, but normally I don't really care if a movie is rated PG-13 or R. It makes no difference to me. But in my opinion, the swearing just didn't add anything. It wasn't funny or it wasn't more emotional. And you may not understand where I'm coming from unless you just kind of see it for yourself. But this is the rare time where I think they really should have toned the movie down to be PG-13 and just take a lot of the swearing out of it. I think it would have been a more enjoyable film a little bit, and also just would have been more accessible for a lot more people, who aren't getting to see this movie now because of the rating. And I think this movie is perfectly fine for teens. Like, I think it would be a good movie for teens to watch if anything, but to kind of make it so they have to be like an adult to watch it, I don't know. I feel like that was the wrong move. But yeah, I don't really have too much to say about the film, honestly. It's just, for the most part, it's kind of harmless. It's fine. It's pretty average. I wasn't bored or frustrated by the movie. I was kind of underwhelmed emotionally. Like, I think they had a few scenes that really got there for me, but nothing that was like really, getting me too moved. And there are some great ideas in here that I think could have worked really well with a stronger script and better characters had they really given a lot of it the time to develop more and just be a stronger journey. And the movie tries to convince us that these are very flawed people who shouldn't be together. But I wasn't feeling that I needed to see these characters end up together by the end. And I think that's partly the chemistry with the actors. I think that's partly the script for doing that. And just the movie overall not being that strong, it just wasn't making me feel very invested in these characters and where they'd end up by the end, which is the complete opposite of what a movie like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind does, where that movie, I'm so invested in these characters and seeing where they end up. I just think this could have been a lot stronger. And it's just that very little stands out here. Like, besides those few great scenes I mentioned, I don't think this is a movie I'd be inclined to revisit or really recommend. Director Kogonada tries his best to make a touching and thoughtful film. It has the right ideas and comes from the right place, and it's certainly an ambitious project, but I think the script in particular needed a lot of work if this wanted to be on the same level as classics like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which, as you can tell, I really love that movie. Go watch that movie. That's a great film. As for A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, I wouldn't say this is worth your time in theaters, but if you are interested in checking it out, it's not a bad film. And I would say give it a watch on streaming. I'm sure it'll be on Netflix in a few months. So if you're interested, I'd say go watch it on there. Otherwise, it's not really a film that I would say go out of your way for. So I'm going to rate this movie a C+. And that about does it for this episode. If you want to follow my reviews, you can find me on Letterboxd at MovieKing1224. You can also listen to this podcast on your favorite apps such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. If you have any comments or feedback, I would love to hear it and improve the show. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell to hear more like it. I appreciate you all so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.